Furioso.
So I just started rereading the Aeneid for the class I'll be teaching this fall. Of arms and the man I sing. And I just got a few lines in and started thinking about Paradise Lost. So I wanted to record this video, share a couple of thoughts about Paradise Lost. Sort of the wider context of Paradise Lost. So, I'm teaching several epic poems this year. The Aeneid in my class on the Romans. In my Spanish 3 class, I will have the Cid and the Araucana. The Araucana is an epic poem about the conquest of Chile. So after Pizarro's conquest of Peru, there's politicking and exiling and all sorts of adventures. And a bunch of Spaniards go down to fight the Mapuche. It's the very edge of what had been the Inca Empire, and the Inca had not been able to subdue these people. And although it's not famous on a Don Quixote or Aeneid or Paradise Lost level, it's a good poem. I will offer as proof the fact that it is one of the 2 poems that when Don Quixote is going crazy, early on in the story, Cervantes describes 2, he makes fun of all of these epic knightly poems, which is one of the main purposes of the entire work. But there are 2 that he describes as, through character voice, but I really believe this is him, that are saving, are good, epic poems. And the Araucana is one of them. In this Spanish class, I also am teaching it. It's really fascinating. This is an aside, but I wouldn't call it an epic poem, but it's a poem written by, I think, a man named Espinosa that is still performed to this day in New Mexico. It's called The Comanches. I don't know if you know this, but the Comanches had a vast slaving and raiding empire in the 18th and 19th centuries. And they would raid deep into Mexico, like 1,200 miles. And they treated New Mexico differently. They often raided, but they also had uneasy alliances with them over the centuries. At one point, the governor of New Mexico refused to help the governor of Mexico because he didn't want to ruin his the good thing he had going with the Comanche. But anyway, there's this epic poem in which the New Mexican forces defeat the Comanche, and it is still performed in a small town near Taos today, with all the associated, like people are upset about it because of racial issues. I mean, the thing itself is living history at this point. And like any good epic poem, it treats the bad guys are bad guys, but it treats them with dignity. That's actually, I think, the biggest weakness of Chanson de Roland. Anyway, I'm going to get to Paradise Lost eventually. You know, one of the things about the Araucana is that it feels very Virgilian, right? And there was a revival in Italy and Spain and France of these Virgilian type epics. Orlando, Furioso, etc., right? And perhaps you'll agree with me that these poems, well, they're awesome in a way. The Lusiads is another one, if you want the Portuguese one. They are awesome. They're just straight up awesome. But there's also something tawdry about them. Certainly part of that is that we're reading it through modern and postmodern eyes, with all the good and bad that comes with it, mostly bad. But as a Christian, particularly, even the greatness of Homer's epics is tainted. I mean, Homer's objectivity in describing men like Priam and Achilles is great. And, you know, most people, I think, tend to look at Priam as a good guy. When they focus on Achilles' hubris. I think the search for glory, you know, I do think we can make a very strong argument that we are far less likely to admire Achilles than an ancient Greek would. It's because we have different concepts of glory, particularly as Christians. And a lot of those pagan concepts of glory sneak in to these poems. The English poems are so unique. What are the epic poems you think of when you think of the English canon? Well, you think Beowulf, you think Fairy Queen, you think Paradise Lost. I mean, Piers Plowman and Canterbury Tales are awesome and long, but I don't know if we would call them epic, right? They're a slightly different creature. So Beowulf, Fairy Queen, and Paradise Lost. And Beowulf, we can't really count as English, right? It's pre-Norman. What Fairy Queen and Paradise Lost have in common is their celestial nature, or their fey nature. I know those are two very different things, but they're non-terrestrial nature, right? The fey and the heavenly, the infernal and the celestial, the green and the blue. And Milton's Paradise Lost, particularly, it comes as the end of the age of the epic poem is arriving. And if you think about it, there are no English epic poems of note about their martial and imperial prowess, right? And I'm not talking Kipling 200 years later. It's not even epic, but it's also another era, right? So this era is sort of coming to a close. When Milton writes Paradise Lost, and he uses this form. First of all, what he does with the English is fantastic. He's not bound by Italian modes, which is fantastic. But think about it. Isn't it fascinating that the English epic poem is about a war in the heavens? And that's such a great reflection of what was going on in England at the time. There was the social conscience was more directed to and bound for heavenly things, because there was plenty to write about, right? Scotland, Civil War, the Armada and Drake's adventures. Like, you didn't have to go very far to find something to write like the Araucana. Instead, it has these enormous, universal, eternal themes. And I think that's absolutely fantastic. It's part of the reason English language letters have been looked to. No one outside of Spanish students, and by that I could mean students in Spain or students of the Spanish language, or history buffs, are going to want to read the Araucana, which is cool. I am a history buff. I am a Spanish teacher. I like it. But Paradise Lost is a work for all mankind because of its bigger, eternal themes. All right, well, I guess I better get back to the Aeneid. Peace of Christ be upon you.
What day is it today? Remind me.
It's Sunday, Mr. Pension.
Sunday. And what do we do on a Sunday morning, wherever we happen to be? We go to church, you bloody heathen!